Today I'm going to show you how to make empanadas. First, you're going to need salt, shredded cheese, any kind is fine, 3 cups of maseca, it's basically Mexican corn flour, and at last, chicken breast. To start, you're going to want to drain out all the excess blood out of your chicken. I don't need any of that blood in there. Next, you're going to want to get a medium-sized pot. Put your chicken in and just fill it up with some water. Make sure the water at least covers the chicken. Alright, next you're going to want to turn the oven to about medium and put on the pot. You're going to let the chicken sit and cook for about 20 minutes. Once the chicken is done cooking, you can take it out of the pot and put it in a normal bowl. After putting it in a normal bowl, you can just set it aside for now while you work on everything else. While the chicken is cooling, we can start on the dough for the empanadas. We're going to take the maseca we have and dump it into a medium-sized bowl. After that, you're going to want to give it a couple good shakes to make sure it's nice and even. Next, we're going to add some salt. This will add some flavor to that rather bland dough. You're going to want to mix that up and so it gets all the way through. Next, we're going to get about a 2/3 cup worth of water and just start slowly adding it in. Then you're going to use your hand for this, so I hope you're not afraid to get dirty. But you're going to use your hand to mix up the dough. You're going to start mixing the dough, and you're going to want to do this for a couple of minutes. You're going to want the dough to come out being sort of like clay, a little sticky but still a little dry, just so it's able to stick together and be balled up. It's okay for it to be a little grainy, but if you want it a little more doughy and a little more clay-like, just add a little more water. Mix it up and make sure it's all good. Once the chicken is cooled down, start to shred it in little pieces. Not too little, but little enough to where they're kind of bite-sized. This recipe is not for those that aren't a fan of getting their hands a little dirty. This recipe will call for being a little dirty, and it's gonna make a bit of a mess. Finally, once all the chicken is done and shredded, you're finally ready to make your empanadas. Just get your cheese out. Now to set up your space, you're going to need some wax paper to put on the cast iron tortilla smasher, a rag to put the dough on, your chicken, your dough, and of course, the shredded cheese. After you have everything set up, it's time to start rolling out and making the actual empanadas. I like to lay out a little bit of cheese on the rag so I don't have to reach into the actual cheese bag and get stuff into it. So what you want to do is you want to get a nice clump of the dough and you want to start to roll it up into little balls. You want to make the balls about palm size and then place it in the center of the tortilla smasher. Close the smasher and lightly put a little pressure on the handle. This way you get a nice even spread of flattening. Next you'll want to flip the wax paper and start to peel off the tortilla / empanada shell. Then you want to get some chicken and fill it up. The amount of chicken doesn't necessarily matter, but you don't want to overfill it. Then fill it with some cheese. You can fill it with as much cheese as you want, as long as it doesn't overfill. Then just fold it over. Once you got it more or less folded, just pinch the edges shut. Doesn't have to look real neat, just make sure they're shut. This way you can cook it without it all spilling out. That's basically it. Let's make another one. Empanadas is a really good way to get people involved in helping making dinner. This is what me and my siblings used to do growing up when my mom would ever make this. We'd take turns doing different parts of this. Now we got some empanadas that are finally ready to cook. What you're gonna need is some vegetable oil and a decent sized pan. You're gonna want to turn the stove on to medium high. You're gonna want to fill up the pan with a little bit of vegetable oil. Not too much so you don't drown the empanadas, but just enough to where you can actually get the good frying going. Finally, it's time to put in the empanadas. You're going to want to put them in gently and put them in away from you. That way you don't splash yourself with grease. Then you're going to want to just let them sit in there and fry for about 5 minutes, maybe 7 each side. That way it cooks the dough all the way through and it helps melt the cheese on the inside. Alright, so after a few minutes, you can finally get around to actually trying to flip the empanadas. Alright, now once the empanadas are done in a nice golden yellow, you're going to want to put them in a strainer on a plate with a napkin so that they can strain off that extra grease. Because you don't want all that grease on it. It's not very healthy. And with that, your empanadas are done. Now we just need to make the salsa. Alright, for the salsa, you're going to need 2 tomatoes, 1 onion that's going to get cut in half, 1 jalapeno, and a handful of cilantro. Step 1 is to put all the vegetables in a pot. You're going to want to cut the stem from the tomato and cut the onion in half. The next step is to add water. Make sure you fill it up to where the tomato and onion would be completely submerged. You're going to want to turn the oven on to about medium and let the vegetables sit and boil until they're softened. Once the vegetables are softened, and you can tell this by the fact that the tomato's skin will actually start to split, it is ready to be pulled out and put into the blender. You're gonna wanna set the jalapeno off to the side on a cutting board. This is because you have to cut off the stem. It's a nice simple cut, just one quick cut, get rid of the stem. Don't even need it. Next, we're gonna add on the cilantro. I don't want to take off any bandings or anything like that. Make sure it's washed. And then just a simple break of the main stem so it all fits in nicely, and just shove it on in. Next, we're going to move on to the actual blending. There are a couple extra ingredients you're going to need. The other ingredients are lime juice, salt, and garlic powder. You're going to want to add in the salt, about a tablespoon worth of salt. Then add in about a tablespoon or so of the garlic powder. And then add in about a tablespoon or so of lime, depending on your preference on the tanginess, on what you want to taste with the lime. Next, you're going to want to put it on the blender and get ready to blend it. Make sure you blend it into a more or less fine salsa texture without any real chunks. Once it's done, just pour it out into another bowl and your salsa is done. Doesn't it look yummy? Finally, set out your empanadas on a plate. And finally, you're going to want to add on your salsa on all of them. I like to put on a decent amount so it at least covers them all. It's usually whatever the person prefers. But after this, everything is all done, and you are now ready to enjoy your nice and hot and delicious empanadas.